Welcome everybody. Hope you're doing well. Welcome back to another review here on the channel. Today we're taking a look at a pair of Walthers Proto F7A F7B locomotives in the Southern Pacific Black Widow paint scheme that are both factory equipped with LokSoundv5 DCC and sound. Wanted to bring this video to you because I couldn't find any of this paint scheme specifically represented on the internet, so I wanted to show them off in case you were looking to pick some up, maybe at a train show or from a dealer if you can still find them. Before we get into it, as always, do me a favor and drop me a subscribe if you're new, or if you find yourself coming back anyways, really appreciate it. Like the video if you enjoyed as well, and drop me a comment if you found this interesting or you just like to chat. Love going through those with you. Well, let's go ahead and get started. First, I did want to point out that these are just the tags from the shrink wrap that went around the boxes. So there's one tag for each set of these locomotives here. So you can see the locomotive numbers I have. These are the only B units offered in the set that they came with the A units. I've chosen to go ahead and unbox one of the A units. In this case, this is number 6301. So let me get the other ones out of the way here and we'll get going. Alrighty, so since the unboxing experience is the same on all four of these locomotives, we'll just skip one for time. Show you the box. You've seen this end. On the underside, the typical Walthers Proto box art. But if you buy the set, you just get this plain end here with a label on it. That's where the label will go if you buy just the A unit by itself. You can go ahead and finally unbox this. This locomotive still uses styrofoam. There's nothing in the pocket up above, but we do have a guide on the lock sound function. So I'll show you for reference. This is what it comes pre-programmed to, and there's a couple other functions that aren't listed that I'll show off as well. And then this is the parts diagram of the locomotive. Move the styrofoam out of the way. We have the standard blister packaging. And some nice soft plastic on top of the model, as well as in the cradle here. Here is a quick spin of the model before we go ahead and take a look at the details. And we'll take a brief look at one of the B units as well. It's been a little while since this model was released. It delivered in the summer of 2022, and I picked it up from Walthers directly in January of 2024 because Walthers was having a sale. It was part of their warehouse sale, which changes monthly. So I was able to pick up each of these sets at a 50% discount. The normal selling price for these is approximately $480 retail. Walthers lists them for $600, but you want to go through a dealer for those. So I was able to pick up both sets for just over $500, which is a pretty good deal. And now for my favorite part of the video, taking a look at the details. First up, we'll take a look at the front of the locomotive here. You'll notice right off the bat that we do have cab figures installed on each side, which is really cool to see. Going top down, we do have an antenna that's pretty tall here that sticks up quite a ways, and there is some conduit that runs down to the center of the nose, right where the silver paint begins. We have two dark gray grab irons above the cab, as well as metal windshield wipers. Two grab irons on each side. And then we get to our lighting package. Up top is a single bulb, which is our flashing warning light. The headlight is a dual bulb setup side by side. And the class lights and number boards are also lit. They both come on with the same function, and they are both only white. Little issue with my number boards on each side, the plastic that goes over the numbers there has a couple burrs on it. It wasn't filed too cleanly down. So I may need to maybe even pop that out just to clean that up a little bit, because it's a little bit sharp if you get it at the right angle. There's a variety of other light gray grab irons around the nose here with the gorgeous Southern Pacific Lines logo here in the center. The coupler is Walthers' Proto coupler, which is magnetic. And we also have this very nice plow with two steps on each side with some MU hoses here. They're not silver tipped, they are just fully black plastic, but they are fairly flexible. And we have another train line hose on the right. And here is a quick head-on shot of the locomotive. You can see that very, very tiny plastic antenna there. Be very careful with that. as well as some more of that flashing around the top and bottom of the center of each of those number board housings. I do like the Southern Pacific style where you have the locomotive number here in the center and then the X and the locomotive number on the side. I know sometimes it's used for the train number, but I think it looks pretty cool that it's filled in here in this case. Moving on now to the side of the locomotive, pausing up at the front, you can see above the cab window we have a sunshade as well as wind deflectors here. These are metal grab irons running up the side around some separately applied plastic steps to make up that part of the locomotive. We've got a speed recorder on the front axle and of course the little F for front labeled down there. And you can see on the roof as well, there's some metal grab irons right above the cab and the horns in opposite directions on the top as well. Moving on now to the rest of the locomotive, we've got that lovely Southern Pacific logo there. You'll catch the very large metal grating across the entire side of the locomotive. Up on top here, it's surrounded by rivets on both sides, which are a little hard to see, but there's good rivet detail across the rest of the model. The portholes are separately applied plastic pieces on there. We've got some etched metal platforms just under this step here, and a couple grab irons in the lighter gray on the side that are separately applied metal pieces as well. If we take a look here at the center, there's those fuel gauges in the middle outlined in red here at the bottom, which is pretty neat. It looks pretty good. Not a whole lot going on the side of these locomotives paint scheme wise. Of course, we've got the number in the rear in this paint scheme, so it looks pretty good. Let's move on now to the rear. All right, now in the back of the locomotive here, we'll go top down once again. The diaphragm is sprung, but only side to side. It doesn't really go in and out at all, but that'll help you for tight tolerances around curves. The locomotives do connect very prototypically with each other, the A unit to the B unit and such. We do have more MU hoses here. They're all completely black plastic with no silver tipped ends. And the same metal coupler here in the back. We do have a metal piece in the middle down there that spans underneath the coupler. That does make it a little difficult to remove the shell and get the coupler back on after you're done. Speaking of removing the shell, that's what I did just recently to investigate these lenses on the back of the locomotive. There's a red one on the left and a white one on the right. I was really hoping when I bought this locomotive that those would be separate controls or some sort of emergency light function, but it doesn't seem like that's programmed in or even possible. When the backup light can be turned on, only the white will illuminate. No matter what you do, you can't press a combination of buttons to get the red one to illuminate because there's only one LED in the frame there. It's a separate board, approximately this tall, right around here, that's connected to the main motherboard via cables. So that's a possibility of a future upgrade to add a second LED in that spot, so then you can have both lights available. Other locomotives in this release just have a single red light or just a single white backup light, but this locomotive had two, but only one is functional, and that is the white one. And here's a quick look at the other side of the locomotive just for consistency. The fuel gauges are exactly mirrored, exactly the same as the other side. And something I did forget to mention, on the other side of the locomotive, we do have the very small EMD logo here in this spot, just by the cab stairs. That's really the only printing on this model, but it looks pretty good. You can see it under magnification. A little hard to see with the camera here. Next up, here's a shot of the roof. You'll see this antenna, of course, up front with that conduit detail running down in between the windows. We've got both horns here, one forward, one back, and then there's a separate raised piece in the middle, this little circle. If you know what that is, please let me know. I couldn't figure out myself, so would appreciate some experts in that field. But moving down here, we've got the radiator fans and such. There's no steam generator or anything in the back here for passenger service. It's a freight locomotive here. So we only have flat panels with lots of rivet detail down the sides. Looks pretty good from the top. Not a whole lot of detail necessary on these F units because there wasn't a whole lot in real life, so it looks pretty good. And finally, here is a shot of the underbody of the locomotive. Just flipped it around here so you can see the speed recorder detail. All of the axles are covered, so no rotating bearing caps on this model, which is just fine. The underside is a complete mirror of itself from side to side. There's not a whole lot of underbody piping besides some brake detail on the trucks, which is all right. The only difference here is that we have this L on this side, so obviously not reversed. And when you are taking off the shell, you want to be careful around this location because This little cutout, that triangle, is part of the shell, and you want to make sure these 2 points on each side of this box here fit in snugly. But that's the only thing you really need to worry about too much. Next up, we'll take a very quick overview of the B unit. This is the same one in the set, so we had 6301 as the A unit, and the B unit is 8301. You'll see it's very, very similar to the A unit. Here's a shot of the front of the locomotive. So it's just like the back of the A unit without any lights on it. I'll show you the next side. Pretty much the same thing here. The only way you can tell the front is, of course, if you look at the top here, and we have the little F logo on this side at the bottom. And we'll move again to the rear. Same scenario here with the lights, where only the white lens has a light behind it, so the red lens is there but doesn't do anything. And that's that. The metal grates, again, are very fragile. There's nothing really supporting it in the center of the grate, so make sure you don't try to grab it by the grates at all. I'll show you quickly the underside of the locomotive in a little more detail. The exact same setup as the A unit, just not a lot of underbody detail, but we do have some MU hoses here on each side. Let's go ahead and get the units on the test track and show you some of the DCC and sound features. All right, welcome on over to the test track. I'm going to show you some of the DCC and sound features with the LokSoundv5 decoder in this locomotive. First up, a quick recap of the DCC and sound functions. This is what it says from the factory, but this is what I've come up with to what the entire locomotive is actually programmed to out of the box. Sorry if my handwriting's not perfect for the glare there, but I hope that helps you, because it's not just those functions. There's more pre-programmed in, and there wasn't anything from Walthers online that directly said what all the functions are. But in any case, we'll run through all the functions, and I hope I've got them pretty close. I'm not an expert, but that's just my best guess based on other LokSoundv5 sounds that I've heard. But let's go ahead and get started and show you what we got. First up, we'll go ahead and turn the locomotive on. The locomotive does not automatically turn on when track power is applied. From factory, it's programmed to address 03, but I've already gone ahead and programmed these to their road number since I've had them for a little while. Function 8 turns on the locomotive. And you'll notice that these locomotives are really a pleasant sound out of the box. They're not too loud like some of the Tsunami 2 decoders have been recently, so that's pretty nice, but it's all personal preference, and of course you can change the master volume to your liking through CVs. F0 is our front headlight. F1 is our bell. And that'll go on for a little while after you've released the F1 key. F2 is our horn. That also functions as long as you hold down the key. F3 is our coupler clash. F4 are the dynamic brakes we'll take a look at when we're running. F5 turns on our front warning light, which you'll notice is a pulse setup. It doesn't appear to be sort of like a gyro light or a Mars light in rotational. It appears to just be a pulse warning light. F6 turns on both our class lights and our number board lights. Under the shell, it is a single bulb for each side of the locomotive. F7 is supposed to be the manual compressor, but none of my locomotives respond to F7. It doesn't appear to do any sound function. F8, of course, is our startup and shutdown. F9 is the drive hold, so you can turn that function on while you're moving, and it will stay at that speed, and you can ramp up or down the engine notching using your throttle instead. F10 is the independent brake, so if I toggle it on here while we're sitting, but it won't let you drive away with that on. F11, 12, and 13 don't appear to do anything on my models. F14 is a handbrake. and that has one set duration no matter how soon you turn it off. F15 is sort of an emergency stop. It'll stop the locomotive when you're running, bring it down to a stop, and then if you toggle off, it brings it back up to the same speed step. I don't remember if there is a LokSound term for that, but that's effectively what it does. 16 and 17 don't appear to do anything. F18 appears to be a sanding valve. And that one will function a set length. F19 doesn't appear to do anything, but F20 is some sort of air let-off. And it's a little bit delayed after you press the key there. F21, I believe, is sort of a shorter air let-off. There's that one. And F22 and 23 are what sounds to me like door closing sequences. I'm not exactly sure which one of them is which. 22 is very quiet, so listen in here for 22. And that has a little bit of a louder sound when I toggled it off just there. Here's F23. And turning that off. F24 is what I believe to be shutters. It's also pretty quiet out of the box. F25 is some sort of air thing. I don't know exactly what it is. Maybe another little short air let off. And F26, 27, and F28 are pretty standard. F26 is our manual notching up, and F27 is the manual notching down, and 28 controls the manual notching logic. So let's go ahead and ramp up to notch 8 and come back down here just for a quick demo. And we'll notch back down here. And back down to idle. Let's get this guy moving and show you the sounds as it goes. Alright, we'll go ahead and get this guy moving. Speed step 1 doesn't actually produce any movement, so here's speed step 2. You don't really get any ramping up of the motor here, just a little bit jerky here. Up to speed step 3 is where it pretty much smooths out. Let's ramp it up to 10 to hear that motor kick in. And those sounds are not triggered by me. All of the units do that. It's kind of cool, like a flange squeal. Go ahead and ramp up to 15 to become farther away. There's some pretty nice momentum pre-programmed in. If I go ahead and flip to reverse, since I have the headlight on, of course we have the rear headlight. There's just that white lens that I was talking about. There's no way to get that red one back on. Let's go ahead and come back in reverse at speed step 20. And I'll show you quickly function 15. Stops the locomotive. If I go ahead and turn function 15 off, we'll pick right back up. Let me turn on the dynamic brakes too. Which that function really just kills the motor until the brakes come on, just like so. And finally, let's go ahead and turn off function 8 and show you a shutdown. You'll notice all the other lights stay on. There's no capacitors in this model, so if I go ahead and take it off the tracks, it will immediately all go out, just like so. And quickly to talk about the B unit, all of the functions are the same. You're just missing, of course, all of the lights on the front of the locomotive. We do, of course, have the rear backup light on when we go in reverse. They'll pop that on there, so you can get a nice look at that. In the manual, the Walthers manual that came with it, auxiliary light is said to be on function 11, but that doesn't actually control anything. So that's where you would think that this light might be programmed to, but no, it's only on the F0 headlight, because if I turn that off and flip back to forwards and flip on F11, nothing happens on the rear here. There's no lights on the front of the B unit once again, and all the sounds are the same functions as the A unit. Let's go ahead and give you a quick run by with all 4 units and then finish up with some final thoughts. And quickly, before I forget, some overhead shots of the diaphragms. This is a connection on a straight, and now we're moving to a 22.5-inch curve. You'll see the diaphragms are touching and bending to the side. It looks very prototypical. On a straight, it's even difficult to connect the rear of the B units together. You have to sort of finagle them to get them to connect, while the A and B pairings are a little easier to connect, but it still looks really, really good. I hope you enjoyed that demo. Just wanted to finish off with some final thoughts. First up, all of the wheels on all these locomotives were in gauge according to my wheel gauge here. I don't have a coupler height gauge, but they all looked pretty good compared to all my other rolling stock and locomotives. The only really defects I could find in these locomotives are just a little bit of burrs or flashing around the number board housings from that plastic in front of the numbers themselves. And a couple of the grab irons were a little loose, but no other major or even noticeable cosmetic defects. These locomotives looked gorgeous. I'm still a little confused why Walthers didn't publish a full DCC and sound guide for these locomotives. So I hope that my little chart helped you out, and I hope I got most of those correct as well. That was just my best guess based on running the locomotives and trying all the functions as well as doing them while parked. So I believe that should be correct, but please let me know if some of those are wrong, and I'll make sure to note those in the comments. Talking about price on these locomotives once again, each set sells for Walthers for $600, but at hobby shops they sold for around $480. So I would definitely recommend, if you're looking into a set like this, checking out a hobby shop. With this version of the Southern Pacific in the Black Widow scheme, one of my favorites. Really like this paint scheme. I'm glad I now own it. These were my first Walthers Proto F7 units, or F units at all. I did pick up a pair of Great Northern Empire builder units as well that I'll do a review on. But for me, would definitely recommend these locomotives if you're after a specific paint scheme that you just have to have, like myself with these Black Widow Southern Pacific units. There's not a ton of underbody detail, so that's something you're missing out a little bit. But overall, the rest of the detail, the paint looks really good. There's not a ton of extra markings, but that's okay because the units look great in my opinion. But as for me, I picked these up, again, because I love the paint scheme and because I got such an incredible deal, just over $500 for all 4 locomotives with DCC and sound pre-installed, with, of course, the little sketchy function chart, but I can live with that. I've always wanted a quad set, the ABBA set of the Southern Pacific Black Widow scheme, so here it is. Hope you enjoyed this video. Do me a favor, if you are new and you did make it this far, consider subscribing. Really appreciate it. Drop me a like as well if you enjoyed, or a comment if you found this interesting or it helped you out, or if you're looking for some of these on your own. But with that, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your week.